we're going to go on today and we're going to talk a little bit about bodybuilding and how to sort of have a productive off season off the back end of a prep, and how to have basically a good prep and be in the best spot possible to look your best on stage and to perform and look the best you can in the off season, and just have a general overall good setup around the prep. So we'll just let Neil introduce himself here and then we'll get the podcast started. So Neil, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself for some of my followers that might not know who you are.
Yeah, I'm sure there's quite a few. So I'm Neil. I am a coach. I live in Newcastle now. I lived in Northern Ireland obviously previously, hence the accent. So that's how I know Conor. I just completed my first real bodybuilding season, I suppose you could call it. Done 3 shows, one in Northern Ireland and a couple in England, one in Newcastle and one on my category. So it was a very successful season. I competed once before as a men's physique last year in May. And through that time, then I went from men's physique, which I was fairly average at, was never really my category. I competed at 166 pounds. And then over the course of the last 14 months till I started prep, and I stepped on stage at 186 pounds. So I'm arguably better condition. So around 20 pound of muscle gained in those sort of 16 months, which I didn't really see coming, because you don't know when you're in the off season how much muscle you're gaining and how fluffy you are. Fluffy being one of the words. So yeah, I was very pleased with that. And I think that's what we're going to kind of get into really, is like how we can be really successful in our off season and then have that transition that into prep, which is a challenge, because a lot of people, I feel, I'm not sure about yourself, it's harder to stay dedicated and committed in the off season because you're not seeing that visual feedback, those abs, like you don't really know. You just have to go by performance, feel, and kind of the basic underlying fundamentals that you know, if you follow it, will get you to point B.
Yeah. So basically what I've noticed, whenever you go and when you're in a prep setting and you're, in your prep, you're seeing visual changes every single week. It's like, right, I'm tighter here. Okay, I've had a refeed this week. I'm actually feeling fuller. My performance is better. And you're looking greenier, you're looking harder, you're looking fuller. And then, whenever you're done your prep and you go in the off season, as you said there, you don't really see the visual change every week, because taking off body fat is so much easier than building muscle tissue, because it's hard work putting on muscle tissue. So what I've noticed is a lot of people go into the off season, and because their hormones are skewed from prep, because they were so food focused, they end up rebounding really badly in a negative way. So they'll sort of, go off plan because the hormones are sort of out of whack. They'll not be able to control themselves and binge eat nearly. And what they'll do is they'll rebound, they'll gain, 30, 40, 50 pounds in one sitting in the space of a month or two. And they'll have to end up going into another dieting phase. They've literally just wasted that time, that short window of time where they can really use the insulin sensitivity and how sensitive they are to actually build new tissue, rather than, rebounding and holding fluid and gaining body fat really, really fast. So just talk a little bit, Neil, about your approach, what you're doing coming out of the back end of this prep, sort of what way you're going about it now that you're off the back end of the show and you're looking to progress into the next season.
Well, that's it. Like, this is like a really, I'd say, crucial and important time, not just from a physiological standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint too. And I think that's something that we try and prepare. I certainly do with clients to go, this is like, prep is essentially easy because you're so focused. You have an end sight, you have a goal that's very, very right in front of you. Whereas when you come out in this phase, it's like, whoa, like, who am I? Am I longer the lean guy? So there's a huge psychological component at this stage. You're also massively hunger driven, like everything. You just want your hands on everything. It's going nowhere. Like, you don't have to eat it, but there's a huge drive for hunger and you never feel even satiated. So it can lead to binge eating. So again, preparing yourself for that. And obviously doing this myself in the past, I've experienced that. We've had them signs. Last year was so much better. It's my first season because I said, right, in a year's time, I want to be a bodybuilder, or 2 years' time, I thought. But knowing that food is going nowhere and understanding that this is just is an important part of your prep as prep itself. So slow, I would say for me this year, if I look at it from what I'm doing, which doesn't mean it's right for everybody, I fairly quickly jumped calories up. Now, there's a good and a bad thing with that. I feel that there is potential of like reverse dieting and slowly increasing calories. However, knowing that size is the goal for me, and I want to gain another 15 pound of tissue across the next couple of years, I don't mind seeing that my body change as much. So psychologically, I'm more than amped to deal with that. But what it also does is it takes away the restriction element of what prep is. And that's a really important aspect, because you're still dieting. If you're only adding 100, 200 calories, you're still dieting. So I went essentially around 2.5, well, probably by the time I was carving up and cruising into the week of the shows, 2,500 calories. Now I went up to around 3,800, 4,000. So there isn't that same drive to binge and overeat on shit food. I feel quite satiated with the food I'm eating. Yes, there is still that drive to have the odd off-plan thing, but it's allowing yourself that without eating the whole cupboard.
Exactly.
So this is really important, that at this time, coming out of prep, you're tired still, you're not fully recovered. So the goal is, in my opinion, to get recovered and back to that baseline as quickly as possible. So then you can really start gaining tissue. You can start ramping up training volume, weight, loading the bar and seeing progressions. So it's very much get your health right, get your sleep right, get your recovery right, get those calories up, accept there is a level of body fat gain, because the overarching goal is to grow and grow tissue. And we're not in the right place right now to be doing that.
Exactly. So what I've noticed as well off the back end of the prep is, no matter, guys, this is talking directly to the viewers that are competing, guys that have just competed, Neil will know firsthand, you are going to be starving for 8 weeks until your ghrelin, leptin hormones sort of stabilize themselves. You're going to feel like you could be eating 5,000 calories a day, and I can guarantee you guys will still be starving. You'll eat 5,000 calories and, you'll still feel like you can have another 5,000. So it doesn't matter how much you eat, you are not going to feel full. The only thing overconsumption of the calories will do at that stage is gain body fat and leave you in a bad spot a few months down the line, leaving the off season, your off season the last 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So remember, once you're done the show, as Neil says there, you want to come up and find your maintenance. Reversing out isn't ideal. Your body's in a bad spot. Your body's sort of, fatigued. It's drained. It's in a bad spot. It's depleted, and it needs recovery. Your hormones are skewed. You need to get up to the maintenance at least. Guys are reversing out. They're finishing their prep on 1,800 calories. They're going a week at 2,000. They're going a week at 2,200. They're going a week at 2,400. They're in a deficit for 8, 9, 10 weeks of their off season. They're reversing out, and they're not building any muscle tissue. They're accumulating more fatigue. They're making themselves more hungry because they're still in a deficit of energy. So what Neil's saying there is 100% right about getting the foot up. You're now in the position of building new muscle tissue. You're wanting your strength to go up in the gym, to be able to create a novel stimulus, to grow more tissue. You want to be in a position to increase more training volume, and you want to be in a position, because you're so sensitive off the back end of a prep, that food is utilized and used to build new muscle tissue. Because when you're reversing out, you're missing out in that window of opportunity. So, I would always recommend going into a surplus or the maintenance at least, rather than reversing out and sort of using that time.
There is that psychological component to it, and I think that's why people do it more so, rather than trying to be smart in terms of the reverse process. It's like they want to stay leaner for longer. It's very hard to detach yourself from being that shredded, because everybody cares when you're shredded. Nobody cares when you're mid-off season.
When you're not shredded anymore.
It's trying to prolong that for longer than necessary, but it's something that I kind of really cue into my athletes and saying, you are an athlete, treat yourself like one. So if that means doing the necessary, whether it means in prep, being starving, going through some sleep deprivation, in the off season, getting used to being uncomfortable sometimes in your own body, which again, it sounds such an unhealthy thing to do, but bodybuilding isn't necessarily the healthiest pursuit we could choose. And at this stage, accepting that we need to lose an element of conditioning in order to be the healthiest and the best person, probably, an athlete we could be. Like, again, always say, do you like the person you were? What did you like about yourself 3 weeks out from that show? Probably how you looked in the mirror. The rest of it, you were probably a dickhead.
You don't even realize how good you're looking. It's another psychological thing we'll add into this, what we're saying. You look at yourself. I said this to a girl I used to go with. I was actually speaking to her about this not so long ago. And when she was in prep, I actually said, she didn't feel like she was looking ready, but she was looking really good. And I says, look, you're looking really good. You're looking sharp. And she's panicking, accumulating fatigue, accumulating cortisol, basically putting herself in a stressful position. that she didn't need to be in because of how she thought she looked, because it's psychological. Now that the prep's over and she's on the other side, she looks back and says, holy crap, was I that lean? You don't realize how lean you are until you're out the other end of that. You're always so hard on yourself. It's the same with me and even Big Phil. We were on our prep at the same time. I think Phil was like 4 weeks out and I was like 6. And we're sitting touching each other like, oh, there's still a bit to come there. Oh, them glutes, you can only go off your fattest body part. Them glutes are holding a bit. Phil, look at that. And he's like, oh, Conor, your lower abs there. And now that we look back on the photos of that week, we criticised each other. We're like, holy fuck, look how shredded we were. What were we complaining about?
Yeah. I think that's the thing with like life in general, like not to get too deep, but it's like we never really appreciate where we are in that moment. And it's something, again, it sounds very hippie and stuff, but stuff I'm into, is that introspection and actually going, right, where am I currently? What do I need to appreciate about this stage of where I currently am? Because as bodybuilders, as anybody that's has that growth mindset, we're always looking to the next goal, the next thing, the next chapter, how we can get better. And sometimes we can drive ourselves crazy and not be very present. So, during them stages, I found it very important to practice introspection and go, no, I am lean, I am shredded, I am this person. Prepare myself for when it gets to the off season. What's the good parts of your life then? Be a little bit more present in those moments as well. I know that's away from the science side of things, but it's often our head is what dictates our physiology a lot of the time.
Mindset's a very important thing. Me and Victor Black were actually talking about whenever you're training, the environment matters, the mindset matters. So this is crazy. We were actually talking about if there's a smell, right? Something as simple as a smell. And that smell, reminds you of a time where you were training really, really hard and you were at top performance. And let's say your mindset dips and then you go into that gym that you used to go to and you get the smell. You will automatically, from a psychological standpoint, train harder due to the smell and what it does to your mind. So psychological is a big factor. A lot of it to do is where your headspace is at. Even in the gym with your sets and your reps, if you're in a good headspace, you're focused, you're going to be able to take all your sets to failure and be in a really, really good spot to grow. But if you're in a bad headspace, you're stopping 4 or 5 reps in reserve and it's burning and you're like, oh no. So mindset is a big factor to do with bodybuilding. It's all to do with where your head's at. And it's practicing rituals every day to get yourself in a good headspace. And, focusing, as you said, on, right, okay, I'm in the off season now. And in another 6 months' time, I'm going to have more tissue on. I'm going to be in a better place. And then I'm going to start prep. And you're focusing that as a mini goal to drive you through that off season. And when you get there, then it's like, right, now I'm starting prep. And that's your next mini goal. So you're nearly splitting it into many goals within a big goal. If that makes sense. Nearly like,
absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean?
You've got to have little micro cycles and go and give yourself the target, even on a daily or weekly basis as well. Again, like you say, having your daily routine, having your weekly goals, having what you need to do across that month, having your long-term vision of the year, because ultimately all these phases build into the next phase. And if we're talking about setting yourself up for like a successful prep, there's a year and a half, sometimes 2-year vision of where you currently are now to where you want to be in 2 years' time. So that all takes planning. And if we have that knowledge, we have the data from previous times potentially as well, it can be a very successful prep.
Yeah, I believe what I do with myself is I'm coaching myself at the minute. And one thing I've noticed is you need to be looking at things logically and not emotionally. So what I mean by that is when you're emotionally involved, let's say it's yourself, most people are emotionally involved. They look at themselves during a prep and they're like, oh, I'm not pulling in quick enough. Another 10 minutes cardio. Oh, fuck, I'm running behind. Pull 50 grams of carbs. But they need to be thinking logically as if it's a client. So obviously that's why a lot of people hire coaches, because it takes the emotional standpoint out and puts it into a logical perspective. But what I'm doing at the minute with myself is I was actually coached by Joe Ballinger there for 2 years. And I pulled the plug and started coaching myself because I feel from what I've learned from Victor and what I've learned from all the Poliquin Grip courses and stuff over the last couple of years, I feel I am my best shot at bringing my best package. Okay, so what I've done is I'm quite an emotional being. So what I've done is I've signed myself up to my online coaching platform. And what I'll do is every day I'll collect data. So I'll weigh myself every morning, fast it. I'll take my blood glucose every morning, fast it. And what I'll do is I'll fill in a graph every day. So out of 10, how was your stress? How was your sleep? How was your hunger? How was your fatigue? How was your performance? And what this does over the week, this is on a daily basis, it gives you a graph basically of trends of where everything's at. And what I do from the trends, then I then make decisions off the feedback and the logical data rather than how I emotionally feel in here. And come check-in day, you know, I'll not think, and I'll just log on as if I'm a client, and I'll say, right, Conor's checked in today. And I'll click on, right, last week Conor was 75 kilo. He's in 3,400 calories a day. Right now he's 73 kilo. His weight's dropped here. Let's check his daily data to see if it may be fluid retention. Right, okay, he's been eating the same thing every day, same amount of water, same amount of salt. He hasn't really trained anything that's going to inflame him because we weigh after the rest day. Right, he's maybe down body fat, so let's push his calories up to 3,600. Right, where's his macros at? Right, okay, protein's good. We don't want to push that any higher. Fats is in a good standpoint. We don't want to push that in case it affects digestion. Let's push it up from carbs. And I look at it as if I'm a client now. And that is the best thing I have ever done. Coaching myself is taking the emotional view out of it. Like, oh, I need more size. Maybe I should do this. Or, oh, you know, maybe I need more volume. It's all data collected. And it's like, right, this is where I'm at logically. This is where I need to be in 6 months' time. Let's see where this is at, and let's see where I need to be, and let's make a decision based off that data collection.
Well, I think that's great. Definitely, if you can do that. I know personally, I can do that on myself. I would definitely still be reacting emotionally even to that data myself. And I think that would probably stand for a lot of clients, actually, is why probably they have it, is to be able to do that. But if you can be that and do that, it's definitely one of the best ways to go, because you can trust yourself. You know, you've got your own best interest at heart. You have all that data there. But for myself, I would still be reacting emotionally to that data. I know myself, what I'm like. So anyway, I've got a coach because, again, I feel there's always more to learn as well, because I think you can become quite shut off within your own environment then. And so for me, it's been a massive help actually getting a coach. I get coached by a guy in Scotland, actually.
Vaughn, he's good. I follow him. He's really good.
He's done brilliant for me, you know, because more so, again, from my biggest issue is not doing what needs to be done. You tell me to eat sand for a bit later, but I'll ask you a lot of questions as to why I'm eating that sand. What type of sand is it? Where did he get it from? So for me, it's always, I just like the opportunity to learn, but also you just put trust in somebody like that. But yeah, it's an excellent point. It'd be very interesting to do. It is something I've thought about, is self-coaching, but I'm on a good run at the minute, and like I want to keep that run going, and I know what's worked in the past, so we'll stick with it for now. But question for you actually was, when, in terms of when you're in prep, like and somebody stops losing, you know, body fat per se, or you think they're not getting as tight, what's your first port of call?
So what I do, if I have a client and they're in prep and everything's running smoothly and then things start plateauing, one, I will speak to them, I'll jump in the call and I'll say, you've been sticking to your diet.
And that is the first port of call, because usually it fucking isn't. They haven't.
If they are, they'll be like, yes. And I'll say, right, have you been sticking to your meal sheet or putting food in Fitness Pal? And if they say meal sheet, then I'll say, right, okay. I'll then look over their fatigue. I'll then look over their stress. If their fatigue is high and their stress is high, what we'll do, we'll put them up to the maintenance calories for a few days, and then we'll pull their cardio out and put them into like a deload. So just for 3 or 4 days. And then normally when you bring food back down, pull cardio back in, they just go back down really, really quickly. Sometimes if their fatigue isn't high in the data collection and everything's in a good spot, the calories is probably just too high, or they're maybe, you know, need more cardio, or depending sort of where they're at. Obviously, if cardio is at 45 minutes and food's at 3,000 calories, we're going to pull a bit of food. If cardio is at 10 minutes, you know, and food's quite, you know, vice versa, basically. So yeah. I go off their data collection, sort of question them, jump in the call, see what's going on. But in some cases, people are chopping and changing foods, and they're eating more salt and they're holding fluid, and you're removing food and it's just having a negative impact. I've noticed, you know, you have a lot of people in and you're giving them a meal plan. Everything's like stabilized, the same amount of salt per day, 5 grams of salt, let's say, 300 grams of carbs training day, 150 grams of carbs rest day. Meals are the same, everything's standardized, 4 liters of water a day, etc., etc. Everything sort of should be no fluctuations in weight. And you've people using Fitness Pal without telling you, and they're having bacon medallions for their breakfast the day before their weigh in, and they're up 2 pound, and you're pulling their calories down from, let's say, 2,200 to 2,000, and there's no need. It's just affecting hormones. It's just putting them in a deeper deficit, and it can actually affect their end look and leave them sort of flat and stringy quicker. And that's why I like to work off the data collection, because sometimes less is more. You want to end prep in a good spot.
So I think that's the differentiation between like, or more of a lifestyle-based clients and prep-based clients, is that actually when you are prepping, you have that level of acceptance that you don't have the flexibility for the most part, or you shouldn't really, within your nutrition, within your training, within your lifestyle. Everything becomes much more regimented, much more tunnel visioned, because those variables count. On a lifestyle client, if the weight is up a little bit and they have big medallions instead of like a whey protein or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Where when you're prepping, if you want to be your absolute best on stage, unfortunately, every single thing is important and every single thing counts and has a knock-on effect. So it's a good point.
Like a thing I do with clients is I actually say to them, you know what I say? Someone signs up, lifestyle or prep client. Obviously, prep clients are a little more strict. There's, it's like, oh, Conor, what's the diet plan? And I'm like, what do you want to eat? And they're like, what? And it's like, what do you want to eat? I say, send me for training day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 2 snacks. I'll say for rest day, send me breakfast, lunch, dinner, 2 snacks. And they'll say, send you what I want to eat. And I'm like, yep, you send me what you want to eat. And whatever they want to eat, if it's within reason, I will then put that in their plan for their breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. There's people having pasta bolognese and prep, like 100-gram gluten-free pasta, 250-gram of 5% mincemeat, clove of garlic, 25-gram of carrot, maybe 50-gram of carrot, 100-gram of low-fat dolmio sauce, and that's their dinner. There's people in prep having, 3 or 4 eggs scrambled in the morning and their rest day, or maybe their training day is a bowl of porridge, banana, berries, and a chocolate whey, like a chocolate porridge, or, scrambled egg and 60-calorie bread or something on their prep for breakfast, and stuff that's actually quite nice. I like to make sure the client enjoys what they're eating. So I always make sure.
It has to be, you have to in some way enjoy eating. If you're not eating very much of it, like there's no point in going on any nutrition plan where you actually hate the food as well as being starving, because then really it's a miserable experience the whole way through.
What's your views on this, Neil? So what I've noticed before, past experience with clients, is at the start of prep, things are smooth sailing. You've got these nice foods in, so you've dark chocolate with your oats, you've nut butter with your rice cakes or something. It's all going good. You get the 6 weeks out, and trigger foods, as I say, you end up eating the whole fucking tub of nut butter. You end up eating the whole bar of dark chocolate. What are your views on, the likes of trigger foods, dark chocolates, and nut butters and stuff coming to the back end of prep? I personally like to pull these foods. I call them hyper palatable foods. It's nearly like foods people don't have a good relationship with, because they always crave more, and it triggers them to want to, oh, that was so nice. What are your views on that come the back end of prep and hormones are off?
Yeah, I think you have to gauge the individual, like in terms of like, if me personally, I wouldn't have had it. I just wouldn't have went off it. Just wouldn't have done it. Some clients though, you can tell just from your previous experience working with them that, this could be an issue here, or it's very easy to have an extra 10 grams of peanut butter. Think that's only 10 grams of peanut butter, and it makes a difference. So that might be a potential chance to pull those. And also what is good about having them foods in from the start is that they are more calorie dense, and you won't really miss them in terms of the volume of food and the satiety of your stomach. You won't miss them when you need to pull calories. So actually having them at the start is probably quite a good thing.
Don't notice them.
The end, as calories drop, you're not going to actually miss 10 grams of peanut butter. You might miss it from I love the fucking taste of peanut butter, but you're not going to miss it from the thing of it's filling your stomach out. So that's a good way to do it. Like throughout the whole prep, before bed, I took 15 grams of dark chocolate with me to bed and ate it. And that was every single night the whole way through. It's just something I had. It's something that I kind of like found comfort in. So for me, it wasn't a trigger food. It was more of like a comfort, like day done a good job, go to bed. But that was consistent throughout. It was just rituals. Yeah. But again, as you say, if it's something that can trigger you, you've seen it in the past, get it out and get out of the house. Don't even have it in
Get
the
it
house.
out of the house is right. You know, if you're
Because
doing a
now,
bodybuilding show,
my experience now, like now that end goal has been taken away and that food's in the house, that is something this week I've struggled loads with, is actually going, having a bit and stopping. We're in prep, no chance. I was not overeating in that. Now it's like, fuck, Abby, my wife, fucking take that away and bin that shit for me, you know?
oh shit, it's saying here this meeting will end in 10 minutes because I don't pay for Zoom.
Well, we wrap up soon then, boy.
10 minutes, fucking hell. 9 minutes 49, it's counting down, so it's all right.
That's the pressure. Let's get one more good content bit out.
Fucking hell. Jesus. What was I going to say there? I fucking lost what I was going to say. Yes, do you want to hear a funny story? So, whenever I was in prep for the last show, which I done, when was that? October last year? November last year. It was JT Grand Prix over 2 bros. And I was fat loading for the show. So, for anyone that doesn't know what fat loading is, it's basically you're trying to load up before you go on the stage, you want to be as full as possible. So when you're fat loading, you want to load up on intramuscular triglycerides as well before you start loading up on glycogen. So back in the day, people would have depleted and removed carbohydrates to sort of deplete the glycogen stores, to remove sort of fluid, and then to load the muscle back up so they appeared fuller on stage. But it's been scientifically proven that we also have intramuscular triglycerides. So when we're depleting, we're now loading up in fat, so you could go 200 gram of fat, 100 gram of fat, depending on your weight and stuff and where you're currently at. And this will load up sort of fat cells within your muscle, and then you'll go into your carb load, so you're even fuller again. So I was doing this fat load on my last prep, and it was like dark chocolate and whey for breakfast, nut butter somewhere in along. It was all fats, with like 100 gram of fat a day, 1,800 calories, and just I can't mind the protein, but I got to the stage, I had the dark chocolate, everything bought in advance. Because when you're doing bodybuilding, you have to be prepared in advance. You can't be winging it. So you need all your food prep. So in the fridge, the dark chocolate, 80%. And I'm having the way in the dark chocolate. And Joe Ballinger actually told me, Conor, mate, you're the only boy I know who's binged in a fat load. I went fucking mad. I ate about 4 bars of dark chocolate in a setting. I had like 2 tubs of wee small pippin nut butter in one setting. And I was sitting there crying, like emotional mess, like I've ruined this whole prep, you know. And I had to end up changing the whey and dark chocolate for eggs. And like later on, I had to change the nut butter to eggs again. So my fat load was like eggs, salmon, olive oil, and veg with chicken.
That'll stop you binging.
Eggs.
I was like, everyone's overeating eggs and fucking salmon.
Like of eggs, I don't want to eat anymore, rather than dark chocolate. I want more, you know. So it affected. It's quite funny.
I've seen my carb load there. I was on at 1,000 or 900 grams across each day for 3 days. And honestly, everyone was asking, no, they do. Like, what meal do you want? What are you looking forward to eating after? And honestly, I was like, how do you want to eat after this show? You had that much food in your stomach. I ate that much cream of rice. It was coming out the same way it was going in. It was awful. So it's like, it is actually, it's the last week is always difficult because actually you're backing off. A lot of your head wants to be pushing to the show. But actually, as you say, reducing stress, getting more food in, that's what's going to bring out your best look. And that's why is when you said about self-coaching, that's why I couldn't do that personally, because I would want to be pushing.
You'd be hammering yourself to the ground to get later.
I need somebody to sit. I'd done it the year before. I didn't listen to the coach, and it resulted in a poor result. But this time, I to go and very emotional boy. So, like, I need to be handcuffed and told to sit down in that last week. Otherwise, I'm be on that bike still. But yeah, it's interesting. I'll have to do this one again because this countdown's killing me here. 6 minutes now.
So I'll talk quickly about this here. Still 6 minutes. Sorry. So whenever I'm coming into the likes of the show, I'm Mr. fucking Science Head. So I'm like, right, I'm now 4 weeks out. I'm going to pull a set here. So I'm not as fatigued. I'm going to go instead of failure, 2 reps in reserve. And it's like, right, okay, you know, I want to be ready 4 weeks out so I can pull cardio, so I'm in a good spot. And like, I'm the opposite way around. I'm like, right, I need to be not fatigued. It's like, I need to pull back here. I'm coming to the show. I need a stress-free environment. And it's like,
It's funny that it does go with one or the other, like, because I know all this stuff. It's all so rational. I'm telling clients no, like, think rationally, and then I see myself on the bike at 2:30 in the morning, fucking pedaling away like a hamster. So it's like, but yeah, there's so much to it, and it's such an interesting sport. And through it, like this year especially, I've found so much solace in that community. And not people like other like-minded people. That's why I'd said like about doing this podcast as well, because I want to talk to people in the community and build an audience that we can kind of all relate to, because we all have the same passion ultimately. We might have different beliefs in how we go about doing it or different rationales, but we're all looking to get the best result, for not only ourselves, but for our clients. So this sort of stuff's great, Conor.
No, it is definitely. I want to touch a little bit on sort of peak week. Still 5 minutes left. So tell me a little bit about the way you would do your peak, and then I'll sort of talk about what I've done in the past, what hasn't worked, if there's time, and what I've learned from Victor, what I'm going to do next time. If you want to talk about yours there first, we'll definitely get that bit in.
This one was a very different, I'll go quickly, was a very different peak for me than the year before. Last year it was men's physique, and we were always chasing my midsection that wasn't really there. So I came in quite depleted last time, where this time we carved up heavy. We also had fats alongside that as well for 2 days. So my last 3 days was over 900 grams of carbs on all days, and over 105 grams of fat on all days. Calories were at 5,000, which is a big shock to my body, from going from quite a depleted, stringy looking 2,000 calories to literally 5,000 per day. And honestly, it resulted in a phenomenal look. It's the best I've ever looked. I woke up in the morning of the show and was like, whoa, I am full, I'm hard. That being said, and it's not something we've touched on very much, I used a diuretic. And that, I think, was the reason.
Diazide or Peak Max or natural?
It was a quarter diazide on the night before and the morning of. And what that done was allowed them 900. I went to bed looking like an absolute beached wheel.
Washed you up.
Whoa, it did. And in the morning of, I woke up and was like, Jesus, that stuff works, and it works for a reason. But it's obviously something to be very cautious about.
Oh, it's dangerous, but it works. It's good.
Well, again, it's dangerous if you don't know what you're doing with. So in the past, we've been cutting water. This time we were drinking 8 to 10 liters of water in through the whole thing, obviously.
I think that's better. I honestly, your muscle 70% water.
It was. And I mean, again, you can look at the pictures. It was for me, where I was at, it was a very good look. So sodium, we had a lot of salt the right the way through. On the day of the show, it was the diazide was still trying to flatten you out, because it pulling water intramuscularly all the time, as well as subcutaneously. So we were having to eat through the show, which actually was quite nice, as long as the midsection stayed tight, which was the only issue, was we're having to eat and drink. It was very hard for me to pull a vacuum on the first show.
Because you're full.
So yeah, that was it. It was a very different protocol, but it resulted in a very good look. But again, you have to be. I had my coach down with me.
Trial and error. Every time you know different and what's worked better, and you can do the better one again. Like the last time I competed, we went in, and because I fucked up in the fat load, it affected my look. So we ended up not carbing up, and I was actually with Cafe Miller at the time. Me and her were over and doing the show at the same time, and we were in the apartment, and she was like, "You need to carb up. You need to carb up," and I was like, I know. And Joe was like, "No, keep it fat." And I was like, "Joe, I need to carb up." And Caffrey's like, "You need to carb up." And we're arguing over me carbing up. And I went on to the show because I fucked it. There's not much Joe could have done. And I don't know if you've seen the photo on Instagram, but it was me the day of the show, and it was like a fucking pancake. And it was like me 3 days later, and I looked like an open bodybuilder. And it was like, no, I should have carved up.
I know.
So,
but as you say, it's so hard to tell, because when that protocol and routine is broken, it's kind of then it's complete guesswork as to what's going to work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's so many opinions and shouting. It's like, which one do you go for? You just fucking, sometimes you're better just listening to one person, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
I'm going to trial next time. I'll be competing next August. I'm going to try the one Victor was talking over with me. So basically what Victor was explaining to me was there's different types of water. There's intracellular water, there's extracellular water, and there's plasma water. So extracellular water increases by sodium. Intracellular water increases by creatine and potassium. And sort of the water in between, plasma water, is by water. So what Victor recommends is, keeping everything the same. And then as you come up like a few days before the show, he says, load up in potassium and creatine. And let's say you're taking 5 grams of salt a day, pull it to 3 grams or something like that. For example, you're still having it there. And then
Yeah,
what
you
you're
do.
doing is you're maybe pulling your water from, let's say you're drinking 6, you pull it to 3, and you would keep the likes, if you're taking tests, you would keep that in, and that alone would do the job. Or if you wanted to take a diazide, like, I believe in heavy loading. I believe you need to sort of load heavy. Especially if you're not fatigued and you're in a good spot, you'll handle it better because you've been depleted for 20 weeks or whatever it is. You've been dieting down for 20 weeks.
Body will take it. Your body will take it.
Your body will take it.
Try and save that recording just in case we lose all that, because we're going to go off in a minute here.
How do I do it? Pause, record, and stop.